Okay, welcome everyone. Robbie is here. I'm Lisa, for those of you who don't remember. We got some folks here in the Kadampa too, so we're ready when you are, Robbie.
Okay, any announcements? Yeah, I'm on now. Okay. So this is the fourth of 5 classes in the Discovering Buddhism module, Transforming Problems. Has various names. We have one more class next week, and then there's a break. What's the schedule after that?
Yeah, so there's a 1-week break after next week, and then we'll start Wisdom of Emptiness with Hayment.
Okay, great, thank you. It's a fun class. So we'll start with some prayers in the prayer book. Page 34. We'll read Taking Refuge and Generating Bodhicitta together 3 times. And then we'll read the 4 immeasurables, pausing after each one together once. And then the 7-limb prayer and the short mandala offering. All of those in English. And we do the prayers to help settle our mind and set our motivation for what's to follow. Lama Yeshe, who is really the founder of the FPMT, the organization that we're a part of, he said, for beginners, when you're first starting to meditate, he'd recommend, if your time, however long you set aside for it, he'd say 90% of it should be doing your prayers and setting your motivation, and 10% should be the actual meditation. And he's talking specifically to Westerners because he says our minds are so rigid and fixed. And we really need the prayers to help soften our minds. I don't think many of us take that advice, but that just gives you an indication of how important a highly realized Lama thought that these prayers that we may read through kind of as rote or just think they're a lot of words, he really thought they had a powerful effect on our mind. So we'll start with taking refuge. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my practice of giving and other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my practice of giving and other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my practice of giving and other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. May all sentient beings have happiness, and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings be inseparable from the happiness that is free from suffering. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from attachment for friends and hatred for enemies. Reverently I prostrate with my body, speech, and mind. I present clouds of every type of offering, actual and imagined. I declare all my negative actions accumulated since beginningless time, and rejoice in the merit of all holy and ordinary beings. Please remain until the end of cyclic existence and turn the wheel of Dharma for living beings. I dedicate my own merit and those of all others to the great enlightenment. This ground, anointed with perfume, strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, 4 continents, the sun and the moon. I offer this as a Buddha field and offer it. Imagine this as a Buddha field, offer it. May all living beings enjoy this pure land. Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kam Niryatayami. And now we'll begin our first meditation of the evening. We check our posture, whether we're sitting on the floor on a cushion or in a chair. Our back is a little bit straighter than we normally sit. It's said that the posture is regal or king-like. If we're on a cushion, we're towards the front third of the cushion. If we're in a chair, we're not leaning back. Our spine is a little bit stretched out. Our head maybe a couple degrees just in front of the vertical, but not tilted to one side or the other. Eyes very lightly closed or slightly open. Shoulders down and back, so our chest is a little bit open. Upper arms away from our torso. And hands with right hand on top of left, thumbs touching slightly below the level of our navel. If we're in our chair, our feet are flat on the floor or on a cushion. If we're on a cushion, our legs are in a position that we find stable and non-distracting. So scan your body, start at the top of the head and move down. Identify any sources of tension or discomfort now and address those, wiggle them out if you need to. So that once established, the posture is really self-maintaining. It's not a distraction or something that you need to concentrate on. And you just feel like the weight of your body holds everything in place without a lot of tension or tightness. And having established the posture, first take 3 deep breaths from the abdomen, with the stomach expanding on the in-breath so the diaphragm is pulled down and the lungs are completely filled. And then the stomach contracting towards the spine so the lungs are emptied. Just very slowly, 3 times. And now we allow our breathing to return to its normal pattern. And we make sure that we're clear about our motivation. And even if it doesn't seem completely easy or natural, we generate the bodhicitta motivation, as we did in the first prayer. The wish to become enlightened, not just for my own benefit, not just for the benefit of my friends and family, not just for the benefit of the people I like, but for the benefit of all sentient beings. Without exception. And having set our motivation, we begin our meditation, our concentration meditation. We place our mind on the tactile sensation of the breath moving in and out through our nostrils. In and out. Nothing more than that. Just direct, non-judgmental, non-dualistic perception. Mind, breath. So that they become of the same nature. The mind is a mirror perfectly reflecting the breath, without distortion, without judgment, just the very simple, neutral phenomena of air moving in and out. And whenever we become aware that our mind is moved off to something else, is reflecting something else, we set that aside and come back to the breath over and over again. And now, maintaining the same concentration and the same focus, let's turn in the Gold Prayer Book to page 161, and we'll read our text together. And we'll pause after each line for a moment. We'll pull it up for those people who are online. Okay. Thank you. Determined to obtain the greatest possible benefit from all sentient beings who are more precious than a wish-fulfilling jewel, I shall hold them most dear at all times. When in the company of others, I shall always consider myself the lowest of all, and from the depths of my heart hold others dear and supreme. Vigilant, the moment a delusion appears in my mind, endangering myself and others, I shall confront and avert it without delay. Whenever I see beings who are wicked in nature and overwhelmed by violent negative actions and suffering, I shall hold such rare ones dear, as if I had found a precious treasure. When, out of envy, others mistreat me with abuse, insults, or the like, I shall accept defeat and offer the victory to others. When someone whom I have benefited and to whom I have been great hopes gives me terrible harm, I shall regard that person as my holy guru. In short, both directly and indirectly, do I offer every happiness and benefit to all my mothers. I shall secretly take upon myself all their harmful actions and suffering. Undefiled by the stains of the superstitions of the 8 worldly concerns, may I, by perceiving all phenomena as illusory, be released from the bondage of attachment. And we can do a dedication, acknowledge that we've done something positive by sitting this way. And that's made an imprint on our consciousness that will not disappear, but will ripen in the future in a way that benefits all sentient beings. And you may relax your concentration. I think we've got some very experienced meditators in here. Everybody seemed quite comfortable. I didn't hear a lot of squiggling or wiggling or anything like that. Any comments on the meditation before we start?
If you're in the Kadampa, I'll bring the microphone if you have anything to add.
Yeah, okay.
If you're online, just raise your hand for Lisa.
So we have 2 verses to get through tonight. They're really somewhat similar. They're not that different. Next week, we really have a lot to go through because the first one is, verse number 7 is a practice, or includes a practice that we call Tong Lin, which could be a whole module in and of itself. And then number 8 brings up the idea of emptiness. So I think next week we'll probably have a little less meditation and a little more me running my mouth up here to get through it. But this is a nice setup for this class to go through 2 verses each night. And, I want these verses, what each verse is just enormous in and of itself. It's not like you can just sit down and say, okay, I'm going to think that way. Yeah, I can do that. Each verse includes multiple topics, and we bring, you can bring different meditations to each verse. Meditate on how karma's involved here. Meditate how impermanence is here. These are really 8 huge topics that we can aspire to. And we're not going to realize that. We use the word realize a lot, which refers to actually making this the way our mind thinks, the natural way our mind thinks. It said when we realize a topic, that is the way our mind thinks, that we're not having to remind ourselves about it, but that just arises spontaneously. So to realize any one of these verses completely is a huge achievement. And don't be disappointed if it doesn't come overnight. Maybe it will, but for most of us, this is most of these are the exact opposite way we usually think. It's kind of like we're in a reverse world or something when we read these, and that's not our habitual way of thinking. We're having to break old habits and develop new habits, which is what Venerable Robina always says, that Buddhist mind training is just about developing new habits, habitual ways of thinking that are more peaceful, less suffering, in which the mind is calmer. Okay, so the first verse, so let me get my text here. When someone, when out of envy, others mistreat me with abuse, insults, or the like. Okay, anybody ever been in that situation?
Oh, yeah.
I think most of us have all the time, or constantly, regularly. I shall accept defeat and offer the victory to others. So it's a little bit militaristic there, almost, the way this is translated. My other translation is, when others out of envy treat me wrongly with scolding, insults, and more, may I accept the loss upon myself and offer the victory to others, okay? So it's saying when people attack us, typically, we're going to add unjustifiably to it, or for no good reason. Instead of responding similarly, he's recommending that we accept the loss upon myself. So what does that mean? How would people interpret that? Or what does accept the loss mean? Anybody have any ideas about that? Does it mean saying, oh yeah, you're right, I am a terrible person. Yeah, I did steal from you. Anybody want to take a stab at that? Because that's really the heart of what we're talking here. Linda, you have any ideas about it?
Sure. So I guess if you react in the same way, you're going to be escalating the problem, first of all. Mm-hmm. But additionally, you're going to most likely create anger, and that's going to be negative in and of itself to yourself. Mm-hmm. And so why not just, okay, and offer, kind of stand down.
Yeah.
I think offering the victory to others sounds, a bit like big, but you can just,
Yeah, both translations say offer the victory, so maybe that's right. Maybe we can't finesse our way around it. But I think what you're saying, the way I approach this, I think it has a lot to do with karma. Okay? How many people here have done the module on karma? Yeah. So, okay, most people have. But karma is the natural law of cause and effect. And it's said to be one of the most, if not the most profound teaching of all the teachings of the Buddha, or the most difficult to really understand and to get, but it's one of the primary ways in which karma works is that nothing happens to us that we have not created the karma for. Okay, so if someone out of envy mistreats me with abuse, insults, or the like, I accept that that is the result of my karma, that I've created the causes for it in the past. I probably don't remember it, probably wasn't this lifetime. It very well may have been previous lifetimes if we accept that idea. But if someone attacks us in that way, it's not random. It's not because they're a crazy person, though they may be, but it's definitely because I have created the karma for that to happen to me, for my mind to perceive that person attacking me. Okay? So if we accept that, I think that's partly what he's talking about when he says accept the defeat, accept that we have created the causes for this. Okay? It's not just randomly happening. I think Mark wanted to say something, if you can give him the mic.
Yes, I just had a question before, when you first asked, and I didn't address it. So it says, when out of envy, right? Mm-hmm. So this assumes that we know that the person is envious?
I think he's just using that as an example, okay? I think
it should be any...
Yeah, I mean, we really don't know other people's motivations, okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question. Okay, in the back, we got another hand up.
Yeah, this verse makes me think of a lot of Taoist philosophy of kind of being more fluid. Mm-hmm. So imagining like yourself as a river and water fluidly flowing, and there's an obstruction like a rock, a firm, offensive rock that is unbudging, unmoving, And what do you do as the flowing river, as, kind of in line with the Tao? You move around. You allow the rock to be the rock. You allow the solid, rigid person that is so firm in their beliefs and their violence with their insults and offense and abuse to be what they are, like a rock, and you move around them like the flowing river.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's it. I think the key word in this is accept it, okay? Not resist it, not push back, okay? I accept that this is happening, okay? And I acknowledge that in some way I've created the cause for this. Okay, it doesn't mean necessarily that the other person is completely right, but I accept this, that I am involved in this negative situation. I mean, what's our normal reaction when someone attacks us? It's to go back to justify ourselves, to come up with all sorts of reasons why this person shouldn't be attacking us, why they are wrong. And if we accept this as the result of our own karma, it's impossible for it to be wrong. It's just inevitable that if we attack people in the past, that they will attack us in the future, okay? So it really involves accepting the results of our negative karma. Okay, I think that's what he means or that's what I'm going to say is one of the meanings of the word defeat here. I accept, you could change it maybe to this unpleasant experience. I accept this. I don't resist it. Okay, what's the saying? They say resistance breeds persistence or something like that. What do you say? It's futile, yeah. If we push back against something, it just makes it last. It just makes it worse, yeah. So we accept that this is a result of our karma. And what does offer the defeat to others? How can that offer the victory? Offer the victory to others. What can he be talking about there?
So if he's talking in terms like, if we're talking in terms of like defeat and victory, then kind of thinking of that as like kind of like a battle where there's an offensive and a defensive. And if we're offering the victory, then we're offering basically the win to the other who, you know, not judging the person, but the person that has more rigidity, the more fear, like the increased fear, the increased rigidity, and just, giving them the win.
Okay. Anyone else? I mean, I think of this bit as what we've talked about is that the bodhicitta motivation, that I'm going to take even this unpleasant experience. You know, we're not going to say, you know, we're not at the stage where we can say, oh, this is bliss. You know, supposedly a Buddha can sit there and be attacked and just feel totally blissed out. But even I can take even this negative experience and use it as part of my spiritual path so that I can be of benefit to others. That's what I think of when he talks about the victory. What have I learned from going through this, and can I offer that to others? Do you have something online?
Dinesh, you can go ahead and unmute and ask your question.
Yeah, I don't have a question. So what's going on in my mind, it's about being humble. It's being about the humility. It's about not having an ego. Yes, I could have done negative karma, but it just could be I've not done anything negative, but it's not me. It's the other person and whatever's going on in the head. And that's their illusion. I don't want to go there, and I'm just going to be humble and say, yeah.
That was a point. Yeah, thank you. That was a point I was going to get to, in that both these verses really describe situations in which a very strong sense of self or ego arises. It said that when we've been attacked unfairly, unjustifiably, that is a great time, if you can be aware of it, to identify your ego. You know, we kind of feel ourselves rising up and getting self-righteous. And I think both of these verses describe situations in which we can practice that, identify this fixed, real sense of self that, according to the Buddha, doesn't actually exist. It's actually a delusion, okay? It said we can identify it in moments of great danger, in moments of mental danger, when we're being attacked. Those are places where that self becomes a little bit more visible. Normally it's the water that the fish is swimming in, we're not aware of it. But we can start to identify it, and I think both these verses help us with that. Yeah, I think we got a comment back here.
To turn this around, what if I'm the perpetrator? I'm that jerk. How do I rectify that within me?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's not what he's talking about here. I mean, that's how not to be a jerk. I mean, that's the whole Buddhist path, to be honest with you. Okay, it's just, that means work on developing your bodhicitta, yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's a whole nother subject, yeah. Because the more compassionate we are, the less of a jerk we become. So that involves the compassion wing. But it also involves the wisdom wing if we really think about karma. If we think that being a jerk is going to cause us more problems in the future than being a compassionate person.
Okay, I mean, do you apologize to that person at that instance that, you know, things got out of hand with me or had a bad day at work?
Yeah, the Buddha, I mean, that's what we call purification. And the Buddha always said, if you can apologize to that person, that's great. Go ahead and do that. That lessens that karmic imprint, okay? Lots of times we're dealing, when we're trying to process, negative things towards people who may not even be alive, and we can't apologize to them. But if we have the opportunity to apologize, Buddha said, always take advantage of that. Yeah.
Robbie, we have another question online
Okay.
from Fab. Go ahead and unmute and ask your question.
I'm having a hard time with that, I guess, simply because, like, for example, growing up, I have a very large extended family, and for whatever reason, they always seemed to pick on me and my brother. My brother was much older. He would just succumb to their horrible comments, and my mother would never stand up for us. They would say things like, you're good, that we were good for nothing, basically. And I would get angry. And he would just succumb to it. And even though I wouldn't, yes, there were times I kicked them out of the house. Even as a kid, I told them to leave. But he eventually ended up turning to drugs. I became more focused. And yes, a lot of anger built inside of me, but I did use it, channel it to go to college and do a lot of things that their children weren't able to do. And I have to almost question it simply because while I did not, how should I put it? I didn't go up against the grain, so to speak. I didn't fight them on their comments. I also didn't accept defeat, so to speak. So I'm having a hard time, especially, I guess, I would have been a kid. There's no way that I would have had the emotional maturity to understand this, but I'm just thinking about people, say, in abusive relationships or and such. How do you come to terms with it, I guess?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a huge question, and it comes up a lot in the module on karma. And I don't think this is saying be a doormat or let yourself be abused. It's talking about the mental attitude that we have when we're in a bad situation. How are we going to use that to our and others' best advantage? And that's a really profound question, yeah. But it doesn't say we just accept abuse or don't respond forcefully or whatever. This is talking about the mental qualities that we bring to that. And it's not denying that others do abuse us and do horrible things to us. It's not denying that at all. And it's not saying that we need to accept that. We can certainly change or get out of the situation as you did. Yeah, so there's a lot to think about in your question, much more than I can go into right now. But it's a very important question, yeah. And great comments. I'm just going to say thank you. And I hope maybe what I said addresses it in a small degree. Okay.
We have a comment from John. Practice the 4 R's.
Okay. And what are the 4 R's, John? He's talking about purification practice and the 4 R's in purification, which is another module. But that's, yeah, what we're talking about, purification, yeah. Which we go for refuge, and let's see, what do we do? I can never. Yeah, we go for refuge, we regret what we've done, we do the remedy, and then we do the resolve not to do it again, yeah. So the 4 R's of purification. Let's see, but the question before that, that was Fab, is that correct? Did I touch it all on what you were asking about there?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I mean, I really respect what you said, and thank you for sharing that, and it's a huge issue. I just want to be really clear that this does not mean that we stay in an abusive situation or don't do what we think needs to be done, and we don't act forcefully or even wrathfully at times, okay?
Rainey would like to add rejoice.
Rejoice,
to the
yeah,
R.
okay, great. And, okay, so we got to move on. Number 6. So this is somewhat similar. When someone whom I have benefited and whom I have great hopes gives me terrible harm, how dare you do that after all I've done for you, okay? I shall regard that person as my holy guru. And for holy guru, you can just say teacher, okay? Teachers are incredibly important. Anyone who teaches us anything is held up in the Buddhist tradition, is just felt to be worthy of our respect. Whoever taught us how to read, our 2nd grade teacher, our teachers here at Kadampa, said that the teachers we encounter in this life, in the flesh, are more valuable to us than the actual Buddha, because they're the ones that we actually learn from, rather than the historical Buddha who lived 2,500 years ago. They're passing the teachings on to us. So this is about expectations. This isn't supposed to happen. You're not supposed to treat me this way. I did these nice things for you, and you turn around and stab me in the back. I think we've all felt that way at times. Okay. Rather than, again, this wrathful self arising, we can aspire to saying to that person, thank you. You're teaching me patience. You're teaching me about attachment, how attached I am to things going a certain way. Okay? You are teaching me something that I need to learn. Thank you. Any comments?
You touched on it there, but the root delusion that there is an existent I.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, this is a good setup for the next module, the wisdom of emptiness. The root problem is our sense of self or me. That is a delusion. And this is not the subject of this module, but the root delusion and what's causing this wrathfulness to arise when people don't treat us the way we think we deserve to be treated is a sense of self, which is a delusion. That self that we act upon and guides our actions does not exist, according to the Buddha, which is not to say that we do not exist. Okay, I definitely have a body, I definitely have a mind, those exist, but this sense of self that we apply on top of those two is just a delusion that we've made up, okay? We're so used to it, we think it's real, and it's not. And that sense of self is very strong in this situation, where someone we've benefited and worked hard for turns around and stabs us in the back, okay? And our normal reaction is not to say, oh, thank you. You are a wonderful teacher, okay? You knew exactly what I needed to undermine my sense of self, okay? Because that is putting me a little bit closer to enlightenment, okay? You helped me to see this sense of self, this self that does not exist, yeah.
And you mentioned karma before, but you break that loop of karma, like they hurt you
Yeah.
because you hurt them, so if you react and hurt them back, it's just gonna,
It's just going to build up speed and it becomes a habit, okay? Right now, our habit is when someone doesn't appreciate what we've done for them, our habit is to be resentful and negative and pissy and everything. That's a habit we've practiced it's a meditation we've done many times in this lifetime and in past lifetimes. So it takes some mental energy to break that habit and start thinking, oh, thank you, okay? To break that karmic cycle. And at first it'll seem completely artificial and phony and fake, and that's okay. With practice, it becomes more the way we respond naturally. Any other comments? Okay, so these two are really very similar. They're really talking about the same things, and they're like as we've touched on, to really realize these, to really start to think this way, we have to we have to think about karma. We have to think about impermanence and emptiness and this false sense of self. So they're bringing in all sorts of topics. They seem quite simple when we read through them, but to actually realize them, we really have to bring a lot to the meditation because they are so contradictory to the way we live our lives and the way we normally think. I mean, they're really quite revolutionary. Just to think what it would be like if our mind worked this way. And the Buddha says it's completely possible. There's nothing in your mind that's permanent, that can't be removed if it doesn't work, and there's nothing that you can't develop in your mind. He's saying these are completely possible for all of us. Your mind is without limitations as to what it can develop. It can ultimately develop clairvoyance, he said. That's not my experience. It can ultimately develop complete compassion and wisdom. All that is a very real possibility for every one of us. Okay? So if we have no more comments, let's do our brief meditation on each of these. So go ahead and establish your posture. Three deep breaths. Set your motivation. Concentration meditation. And now we'll do a brief review meditation on these two verses. I'll just read each verse and then we'll just think about the words, what they mean to us, get clear on the content of each verse, and just start to think about what it means for you, keeping your mind very focused and concentrated on the verse. So verse number 5, when out of envy, others mistreat me with abuse, insults, or the like, I shall accept defeat and offer the victory to others. And verse number 6, when someone whom I have benefited and whom I have great hopes gives me terrible harm, I shall regard that person as my holy guru. And we can do a brief dedication, dedicate the merit that we've created together this evening. And you may relax your concentration. Next week we have two huge verses to go through. The first one is about the practice known as Tonglen, which is taking and giving, which is a very wonderful meditation. So we'll talk about that. And then the second one, verse 8, we'll talk about the 8 worldly concerns or the 8 worldly dharmas. And then seeing all phenomena as illusory, which is really about the wisdom of emptiness. So 2 huge topics that we'll just touch on next week. We won't be able to go into them in any depth, but it's a perfect setup for the next module that Hemet will be leading, which will be 5 or 6 weeks on emptiness. So sit in meditation this week, 6 days. Meditate on these 2 verses, and we'll be back here for our last session next week. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everybody online also.
Thanks, everyone. Back next week. The last class.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.